jam-packed house. Who'd have thought? All right, well. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Steven Universe, the show where we talk about the universe of Steven Universe. You guys are great.
You're great.
Thank you. No, thank you, sir. I'm your host, Victor Frost. For those of you who may not know, Steven Universe is a YouTube show where I delve deep into the episodes of Steven Universe and talk about the themes, techniques, ideas in the show, as well as the little bits of lore, references, and gags sprinkled throughout each episode. To make this doubly clear, since I had a bit of a problem with a Kineticon when I did this, of some very excited people coming up and asking for my autograph, I am in no way connected to the show, okay? If, however, there is someone in the audience who does work on the show, don't raise your hand. I don't want you getting mobbed, but please come talk to me. Now, that being said, I am a fan, just like all of you. However, I am not without my qualifications. I hold a bachelor's degree in the cinema and television arts from California State University, Northridge. And when I'm... Wow, got some matadors in the audience. Look at that. And when I'm not making YouTube videos or podcasts, I work my way through the world as a professional audio engineer, which I've been doing for the last 10 years. Oh my God, 10 years. And I've done work for organizations big and small, like Putnam Investments, MIT, Hasbro, Paramount, lots of different organizations. And I currently own my own production company called Frostworks, where we produce a bevy of eclectic, educational, and entertaining content, as I am hoping I can deliver to you guys tonight. When I can, I perform at conventions all across the United States, from HanadokiCon in San Diego to Anime Los Angeles and Anime Expo here in LA, all the way to Kineticon in Connecticut. So, quick question, and this is kind of informational for me here. Who is here because they heard about this through a suggested Facebook post? Well, that was $9 wasted. No. You're all here, and you're the ones in the room, so you're the ones that matter. One more question. Every time I open the show online, I start off giving the name of the episode, then saying, I'm Victor Frost, and this is Steven Universe. And then you hear that lovely little ukulele strum, cling, in the title card. Would you guys mind helping me out with that a little bit? Awesome. I'm going to put this microphone down here, because I'm a moron and can't work a camera phone with just one hand. Okay, so here we go. Gonna turn this around here. Yes. With all of the confidence of an 80-year-old. I don't know, your 80-year-old may vary. All right, so. This time we're talking about instructions. Very handy. After I say, I'm Victor Frost, you guys say, and this is Steven Universe. So if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. This episode, we're talking about the latest episode, whichever that one is. I'm Victor Frost. You guys are so nice. All right, so before we get started, I do need to preface this panel with a bit of a disclaimer. Not the biggest one, just a bit. Where we grow up and the art we consume it's a very important part of how we interpret other works of art. Because that cultural exposure is what we draw off of later on in life. In a way, and I know this is sort of like a old analogy, but it's the one I know, we're kind of like region-locked DVDs. A lot of our assumptions about media really only mesh with media in our specific locale. And even if that region has been essentially turned international, global, really, by the internet, there are still barriers to cultural knowledge, like language, for example. Cultural trends are born and die on sites like Nico Nico Doga and Youku, and unless you speak Japanese or Chinese, you will probably never hear about them. These bits of shared cultural knowledge provide creators like me and the Steven Universe crew with the ability to create and use shortcuts to ideas already in your brain. We can play with lighting and take advantage of the interplay between light and shadow to convey internal emotions. We can use character design to tell you about a character without actually having to tell you about a character. And we can use... It's so sad! And we can use music and sound effects to set the mood, emphasize actions, or bring realism or surrealism to a scene. Now, none of these techniques would work anywhere near as well as they do if we didn't have a solid base of shared cultural knowledge. It's this foundation that helps creators, consciously or not, share their ideas effectively with their audience. And art is ideas. With that in mind, it is important to say right up front that all of these ideas I'm about to discuss with you come from my biases and interpretations, which are rooted in my lifetime experience with primarily Western media. That's okay, because this show is part of the Western media landscape. But if you come from a different cultural background and you see things that don't really figure with your personal understanding of symbolism, meaning, etc., that's okay. Your interpretation is just as valid as mine. This is just me expressing my thoughts, and I welcome you to share your thoughts after the panel. With all that being said, let us begin by briefly looking at how the show interacts with the concept of feminism. I did not copy that font. Huh. Well. So I am really, really glad that more and more, it seems like we're in the middle of an animation renaissance, where shows, even those meant for kids, aren't afraid of breaking away from the habits and, the trends of their forebears. Networks and studios are more comfortable stepping away from the tried and true formulas of before, of known commercial success, and are willing to branch out more. In particular, Steven Universe does fantastically in removing the gender stereotypes that the ideals of feminism fight against. If you're unfamiliar with the term, feminism is the idea that men and women are equal and should be treated as such, all else being equal. For example, if there is a man and a woman applying for the same job with equivalent qualifications and experience, then they should get equal consideration, no matter what. And no matter which one you hire, they should get the same pay. Wow. The way the show handles feminism comes from multiple fronts. For one, the crystal gems are, guess what? All women. Hey, look at that. And they are a bunch of... What is my language rating for this panel? Teen. How's badass? They're a bunch of badasses. As a panelist, it's my obligation to be a quality representative of the content AX provides. And They're a bunch of badasses, and each with complex personalities and ideals, dedicated to protecting the entire planet. 20 years ago, you would have shows like He-Man and G.I. Joes and all the beefed up 80s action TV. She-Ra. The beacon in the dark. Oh my God, 20 years ago was still the 90s. Oh God. I just did the math in my head. Anyways, 20 some odd years ago, a show like Steven Universe probably would have never made it to air. Let's be honest here. So I hear there's like this single dad dating sim. I don't know, guys. DLC maybe? Whatever. Second is Greg's role in Steven's life. In the show and in the comic, which if you do not read the comic, read the comic. It is made abundantly clear that Greg was predominantly in charge of caring and raising him when he was younger, and being the primary source of Steven's early and developmental childcare. While the gems served let's say they served in the form of a protector in a far more literal physical sense. While you can, of course, attribute it to the fact that Greg is human, and so naturally he'd know more about how to raise a child, it does reverse the protector-nurturer dynamic that is commonly assigned to men and women in our society. Yes, crystal gems are genderless, but they're what's called coded female. It's also great that Greg doesn't have that overwhelming bravado that a lot of male characters have. When the gems ask him to stay away from magic stuff, what does he do?
Stay away.
Right, he doesn't go, well, I'm a man and I don't think I have to listen to you. He acknowledges that they are experts, they are knowledgeable in what they're talking about, and he listens to them. Now, mind you, this does not mean that they can walk all over him. In the message, he asserts himself, bringing up that they constantly shortchange him and do not give him the respect he deserves. And at the end of the episode, he gets it. Garnet takes his hand and thanks him for all of his efforts. It is a simple but fundamentally meaningful expression of respect. Stephen also lacks a sort of, that trademark male protagonist bravado, perfectly comfortable in expressing his emotions, crying, working as equals with all the ladies in his life, and even feeling perfectly comfortable rocking Sadie's dress in the talent show. He can't help it if he makes a scene. Speaking of, there's Connie and Sadie. Both. Yeah. Sadie! What are you gonna do now? Wait. Who's current with the show? Okay. What are you gonna do now that Lars is pink? What are you gonna do? Connie, and speaking of which, I do have a script and a time limit, so I do need to move through this. Speaking of which, there's Connie and Sadie, both of whom have proven themselves to be badass, no-nonsense, monster-proof and Bettys when need be. Although they do not also shy away from showing their, shall we say, more feminine aspects of their personalities, their preferences, things like that. All right, so that being covered about as thoroughly as I think I can cover it, because I got my degree in cinema television arts, not lib. Let's get into the show. Let's get into how the show uses classic mythology and folklore to enhance the story. Next time I do this, I'm making that an image. I'm not relying on fonts anymore. Now, since it's easy for people here, being, in the Western culture, to spot Western cultural elements, I'm going to take you through some of the influences, a very big influence on the show culturally that isn't Western. We're going to get into some of the Eastern cultural influences. The first is that of red oni and blue oni from Japanese culture. Who here has seen Yu Yu Hakusho? Blue Ogre? Yeah. Same dealio. I don't want to get too deep into it because there is a lot to talk about, but onis are basically the Japanese equivalent of trolls or ogres, and there are different types. Red oni is a loud bruiser type, and blue oni is a calm thinker type. Ruby and Sapphire fit very neatly into those archetypes, and they are color-coded for your convenience, with their personalities matching well. The second is that of the Taoist philosophy of Yin and Yang. Now, Yin and Yang are not opposing, but complementary forces. Yin is characterized as soft, slow, yielding, diffuse, cold, wet, passive, and is associated with water, the earth, the moon, femininity, and nighttime. Yang is, by contrast, fast, hard, solid, focused, hot, dry, aggressive, and associated with fire, sky, the sun, masculinity, and daytime. Ruby and Sapphire have, from our limited experience with them, opposing styles of action. In the first time that we saw them, Ruby was all but bouncing off the walls of her jail cell to get out and get to Sapphire, and would have kept moving at full tilt, even if she didn't know where she was going. In contrast, Sapphire stayed in her cell and simply sang, letting anyone who was looking for her know where she is, hoping that the result was favorable to her. Now, Sapphire is the yin to Ruby's yang. Like yin and... See, I keep saying yang. Like yin and yang, and the red and blue onis, together, Ruby and Sapphire form what is called a gestalt, a whole greater than the sum of its parts. Their differences complement each other and form a harmonious relationship. That's why Garnet is such a stable fusion. From Hinduism, we see opal, at least... Woo if you like opal. Okay. Hired woman. Okay, I started about 10 minutes early. I want to make sure we don't eat that up entirely. From Hinduism, we see opal, at least in form, very similar to the goddess Kali. Traditionally, she's the goddess of time, change, power, and destruction, and is sometimes presented as dark and violent. However, there have been recent movements that see her as more of a mother goddess. For Kani, her last name Maheshwaran, in Hindi, means Lord of the Universe.
I did not know that.
Shippers make of that what you will.
I'll take it.
Her fighting style in Sworn to the Sword is also very similar to the Indian martial art of Kalaripayattu. We can also see that her stance and uniform resembles two real-life examples very closely. In fact, Sworn to the Sword may also incorporate the Bushido philosophy of the way of dying, as presented in the Japanese text, the Hagakure. That is, for a warrior to be willing to die at any moment in order to be true to their lord. Sound familiar? Yeah. Night my butt. More recently, the hand positions, or mudra, that Garnet teaches to Sivani during meditation is for the Vishuddha chakra, or throat chakra, the fifth blue chakra. Which is the chakra of truth and communication, often blocked by lies and confusion. Staying with chakras, it's possible that the yellow tint on everything during Stevani's breaks in concentration and confrontation with painful thoughts symbolizes the influence of the solar plexus chakra, the third yellow chakra of willpower and taking action, which is blocked by shame. By the by, if you're interested in learning more about Zen and meditation and those sort of ideas, a good starter book is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I am not kidding you. You think that's a funny title and ha ha ha. No, that is one of the biggest, most popular works on Zen, full stop. It is an excellent book. It's a fictional autobiography that uses the narrative to talk about Zen and ancient Greek philosophy. Totally worth a read if you have any interest in that sort of types of ideas. So, all of these ideas and symbolisms are great and all that, but animation is an audio-visual work. Meaning that those ideas have to be integrated into that framework. Now, the specific ideas we mentioned before are part of the narrative aspect of a show. They're brought out by elements in the dialogue and the actions of the characters. But the Steven Universe crew also uses the animation itself to communicate ideas. To really get into it, let's start with one of the oldest, the oldest aspect of the motion picture arts, cinematography. Now, cinema has been around for a long time, a little over 100 years. In that time, it has transformed how we communicate ideas. Now, unlike books, which, where the characters and settings are subject to the imagination of the reader, like how in the book Hermione's hair is one way, but in the movie it's another, Ron's hair, Harry's. They really changed the hair a lot in the Harry Potter franchise. Unlike books where characters and setting are subject to the imagination of the reader, cinema is a look directly into the mind of the people who created it. It is a magical experience and is a product, it's a powerful means of spreading ideas, as powerful as any speech or sculpture or painting. In fact, Kim Jong-il, yes, that Kim Jong-il, wrote in his book On the Art of Cinema that the cinema occupies an important place in the overall development of art and literature. It is as powerful an ideological weapon for the revolution and construction. But in order to communicate ideas, there must be a language common to both the creator and the audience. In books, this language is the literal language. Words, syntax, meaning, grammar, whether or not there's a comma there. In film, the language is cinematography and editing. And this is the language we're going to be learning about a little bit today. To do this, we're going to be looking at an episode that leverages the language of cinematography to its fullest extent in order to communicate information about the narrative and the characters. Anybody want to take a stab at what that episode is? All right, Lapis or Aquamarine? Aquamarine. You're blue. Abadi abadai. What episode? What? Nope, you can't answer. You've seen this before. Shame on you, cheater. The episode is Full Disclosure.
Oh, yes.
Now, even though cinematography is a very complex art, we're going to be focusing on only two parts of it: camera angles and lighting. Let's start with camera angles or shots. Let's start with shots. Now, the overall format of Steven Universe is serial, meaning it follows a defined plot arc. But most episodes are also standalone, which means each episode holds its own little self-contained story. This often makes for a pretty flexible airing schedule in terms of reruns, but it can also be problematic. Because, sometimes you have multi-episode arcs. Like during the first Steven Bomb, wherein this episode is. So how do you signal to your audience that one episode is a continuance of another? Well, you could always do a recap bit at the beginning.
Last time on Dragon Ball Z.
Last time on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Previously on Lost.
Previously on Stargate SG-1.
Previously on X-Men.
Da 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 da. The television of my youth. But let's be real here, that's been done to death. And you don't always need to recap. Like, what if you could do it more subtly? Let's look at how the previous episode, the episode before full disclosure, ended, and how this one ended. Now, this one begins.
Hello? Steven, I got your message. Are you okay? What's going on? Steven?
Now, most episodes of Steven Universe end on what is called a star iris in. That's what that is. But this is the first one to open with a star iris out. Not only that, but everyone is in pretty much the exact same position. They took a little bit of a hit on the art quality, but they're in the same positions. This establishes a direct visual continuity, a direct connection between the episodes. Doubly so if they are aired back to back, like I just showed you. But what can camera positioning itself tell us about the story? Well, over the course of the episode, what the camera lets us see opens up more of the world to us. At first, we start with a long shot, and all we see are the gem's immediate surroundings. So you might think that maybe that's the worst of the damage, and it was contained in a relatively small area, but nope. The camera cuts away to an extreme long shot, or an establishing shot, and we see that much of the nearby beach and the hill were affected as well. As we get through the episode, we see the damage has affected a progressively larger and larger area. And the important thing is that we're discovering this at the same time that Steven is. And that the increase in the scope of the damage corresponds with his level of general anxiety over telling Connie what happened to him. On that note, why is he so concerned about it? Well, one of the most common types of shot is what's called a shot reverse shot. Ooh, Mr. Frost. Isn't a shot reverse shot when a character is shown looking at another character off screen and then that character is shown looking at the first character?
Yes.
And doesn't it normally switch back and forth along with the flow of a conversation?
Yes, but it might also switch for things like reaction shots. For example, your hair is a hot mess.
Ugh. That is so mean.
Yeah, I know.
Boy, that is a frame to get stuck on.
Yeesh. This type of shot is often used to emphasize a temporal, in time, and physical connection between two very different camera angles and perspectives. You see it all the time in cinema and television, and now that you know about it, you're gonna start noticing it a bit more. It's like when you get a brand new car, you start noticing all the other ones of those cars on the road. But what you should also notice is when it's not used. Pay attention to where the camera goes in this scene.
Oh, thank goodness you're okay! I saw the spaceship start to leave and then it crashed and I came back and... Ugh. But you're okay! I guess those jerks were no match for the crystal gems!
No way, they were super strong.
But you were able to beat them back?
No, they totally stopped us. This warrior Jasper was super beefy and knocked me unconscious. Then they abducted me onto the ship because they wanted to take me away forever. And then we crashed the ship and I almost died.
What did they want with you?
They think I'm Mom.
Are more homeworld gems gonna come after you?
I don't know. Maybe?
Steven, I'm supportive and very proud of you, and I'll be right back.
So, like, although it started off as like a normal shot, reverse shot, framing Greg and Steven together to set, and establish a physicality between them, and then following the conversation, it lingered on Greg for a good chunk of Steven's explanation of what happened. Why? So we could focus on and watch Greg get progressively more and more distraught with what had happened. This is important. As the audience, we get kind of desensitized as to the average level of danger in Steven's life. It's a level that I certainly wouldn't let my little brother be involved in. To remind us of how dangerous and worrying it really is, to snap us back to reality-ish, we get to see Greg building up to and having an anxiety attack. This puts the entire plot of the episode into context. Now, until this point, this is all pretty normal to Steven. Hey, it was rough in the end, but, everything turned out okay, so all good, right? Wrong. In the midst of all this, Connie calls Steven back. This is the moment where Steven realizes how his crazy adventures affect the people he cares about. The camera pulls back from the van to show that Steven is watching his dad freak out. Then his phone rings. We cut in on the phone. It's Connie. Cut to a medium close-up on Steven. He's looking at his phone, about to answer it, but stops. He looks back at his dad, and so do we. His dad is still freaking out from what he just heard. Cut back to Steven, still watching his dad. Cut to a long shot of Steven, Greg, and the van. The van falls apart, and scene. We didn't need dialogue to tell us what Steven was going to do. And we didn't need it to tell us what he was thinking. Because you don't need words to tell you that he sees his dad about to suffer a heart attack, and he's worried that his best friend might be just as worried, just as concerned, just as scared for him. You don't need to be told that because you saw him think it. The camera movements and shots let us follow Steven's train of thought with as much clarity as if it were our own, because we can empathize with him. But so far we've only looked at how camera positioning conveys how the characters feel. What about how they make us feel? The angle and positioning of cameras can help us empathize very deeply with characters. Eye-level shots are neutral. They have no dramatic power whatsoever because it's so neutral. Everybody's on a more or less level playing field. When a character is feeling small and exposed, a high angle with the perspective of towering down over them, putting us in a perspective of power over them, can make us feel their vulnerability and meekness. In contrast, pulling the camera low, pointing up, can make us feel their strength. Like here, when Ronaldo's trying to be all wise and sage-like. Trying. All in all, the way the camera is positioned, oriented, and how shots are presented to us and how they're framed can dramatically and drastically impact the message that we as an audience pull out of a scene. But what about lighting? Metaphorically, light and dark are often tied with safety and danger, respectively. When someone is, say, in a deep depression, they're in a dark place. All is seen in the light, and secrets hide in the shadows. Now, this isn't universal, mind you, but it is common enough that ideas that, like the interplay of light and shadow, are often easily interpreted as conflict of one type or another. A great example of this is light and shadow being literally used in an old Samurai Jack episode where he has to fight a ninja. That's a good episode. In the case of this episode of this show, it represents Steven's own internal conflict. During the latter half of the episode, after Steven is psyched up by Ronaldo and his little song, we see shadows beginning to creep up on Stephen. It starts when Stephen first acts on his fear of worrying Connie. Where Stephen is normally fully lit, he draws the blinds, casting a shadow on himself. Then, when Connie calls again, he lies to himself. Not in actual words, but in the intent behind them. He really can't face her, not because of a responsibility thing, but because he's scared of the impact the ensuing conversation would have. Finally, the third shadow comes when he climbs up and prepares to confront Connie. He is completely enshrouded in shadow. He climbs up there ready to make a proclamation founded in fear and lies. But then he jumps down. He's fully lit again. Only his face is in shadow because his head is hung. He looks up, face fully lit, and out comes the truth. Now, I do not believe for 1 second that he didn't go up there absolutely intending to break things off with Connie. But as soon as he saw her from up there, from that vantage point of power, the same one we saw earlier in the episode, looking down on Connie, seeing how worried and afraid she was about him, the wall that he put up, built out of lies that he told himself and to others because he was scared, cracked. He couldn't lie to himself, and he couldn't lie to her. Worry and fear and deception and internal turmoil, all reflected by light and shadow. Now it's finally time for my favorite section of the show. Sound design! I love sound. I love what I do. So before we can actually begin talking about how sound is used in the show, I think we need to talk about the effect sound can have on our perception of what we see. To help illustrate this, I took a little bit of a field trip.
So here I am at my local community swimming pool. You can hear the neighbor kids playing in the background over there, you can hear the music coming off of one of their boom boxes, and you can obviously hear me. Or can you? Well, first things first, the music isn't real. Thank you, copyright. And the kids, they're not real either. Neither was all of the background sound. Well, maybe I'm using a really sensitive, really directional microphone. Nope. This microphone's just a prop. And really, it's not even connected to anything. The microphone I'm actually using is this one right here. Or am I? Why don't we listen to what that mic is actually hearing?
Okay, so I promise this is actually what you be able to hear in the sound over here. You can tell because I'm not nearly as eloquent and I made a flub right then. But that is that. To find out what is actually going on here, let's snap back to the studio. It's good to get out of the studio every now and then. So, what was all that about? Well, that was all just to show you that sound can be a very powerful tool in crafting the world inside these three walls. Silent films notwithstanding, sound is exactly 1/2 of what we perceive in any audiovisual work. That includes television, film, and video games. And it can be a very powerful tool that we creators can use to inform you, the audience, about the world both inside and outside this limited frame. So, apart from the dialogue, there are 3 basic sound elements that creators use to inform the audience about their work. Background, or Atmos as it's more commonly called, helps the audience understand the setting. A cafe sounds different from a starship or a moving car, for example. Sound effects are sounds that are tied to specific actions, like car horns, footsteps, and help sell the realism or surrealism of the actions. Foley sound falls under this category. And finally, music. Music can set the tone of the scene, often speaking of the emotions of the characters, the mood of the actions, or foreshadowing impending events.
I think one of the most recognizable examples of this is the da-dun, da-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun from John. Is there anybody who doesn't know where that's from? Good, okay.
Finding Nemo?
I got one person Finding Nemo. That's good. I like that. That's good. I like that. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right. There are also things called audio effects. For example, if I was faking the sound that you heard in this room, say it's a work of fiction, I would record my clean dialogue, which sounds a lot more similar to this, and then add a layer of echo to it, a reverb effect to it, to give it that space. What is it? Space. I really do love my job. Let's see here. So all of these tools are important to the crafting of the soundscape in audio-visual works. This is especially true in animation. Who wants to take a shot as to why that is especially true in animation? Not you, Kendra. You up front.
Because what you're looking at is an image world, so you're seeing it from a 2D perspective rather than the full surround feel.
You are surprisingly close. Back there in the blue shirt.
I would say that sound and audio not only add to any emotional moment within animation, but it enhances a scene.
You're getting too complicated. Let me just tell you what it is. There is no sound in animation. You can draw as many lip flaps and footsteps as you want, but there will be no sound coming out of them unless someone puts them there. In live action, though we generally choose not to, we can use anything from the recording. We typically just use the dialogue, but we could use all the sounds from the scene if we wanted. Because that's a real thing that is really happening. Animation isn't real. It's squiggle cartoon land. Everything is manufactured in animation. And everything you put in has an impact on how the audience perceives the world you are creating. This is the art of sound design. So, why don't we look at how the Steven Universe crew uses sound design to inform us about their world? To do this, we're going to go through some clips of one of the most acoustically interesting episodes of the show. Who wants to take a shot at guessing what episode that is? No, Tony, no. What? Yeah, what's the most sound-wise interesting episode of the show? Not Mr. Greg. Love Mr. Greg. Also kind of hate Mr. Greg. But my feelings on Mr. Greg are complicated. Red hair. What? No. The red hair one behind you. Yeah. What? Not Island, not When Pearl Sings. Okay. I'm going to let you know what it is. Ready? Rose's Room. And the wave of realization sweeps across the audience. This episode is an excellent example of how sound can convey aspects of the narrative in a way that either wouldn't work or wouldn't work anywhere near as well if done only through visuals or dialogue. Well, that's gone for the next 20 minutes. Let's start with one of the first scenes in the episode. Now, Steven is fed up with not getting what he wants and wishes for a space of his very own. Now, with that, the door to Rose's room begins to open. Thank you.
Huh? My gem! Rose's door. Steven, your gem is opening your mother's room. Whoa.
So, this door has opened a ton of times before, with little to no fanfare. But this time it is different. This time it's opening up to Rose's room, a place that we have never seen before. It's an event, it's special, and we need to make it seem special to the audience. So, what do they do with the door? Well, for one, the whole process is elongated. It takes so much longer than any other time we've ever seen the door open. The door takes a long time to open compared to the others, and in the process, the door makes sounds like massive deadbolts unlocking, and it is generally a big to-do. The actual sound of the door opening is more dramatic, too, that schwarp kind of sound they do. Now, all of this lets us know that this is special. Next, let's go to the fake big donut. Pay careful attention to the music in the background and the sounds of movement.
Hey, how's my favorite fine foods franchise? So I'm thinking double chocolate cinnamon twist with sprinkles on the side. You know I like to dip. Steven to Sadie and Lars. Is this like a joke or something?
Hello, Steven. What kind of donut would you like?
I just said...
It's very nice to see you, Steven.
Well, it's very nice to see you too.
Here are your donuts.
Wait, you guys, I only ordered...
Okay, we love you, Steven. Bye-bye now.
Wait! Where are you guys going? I still haven't paid for these! You guys, hold on a sec.
So, did you notice how glitchy the music playing in the background was? Yeah, it stops and restarts, rewinds, jumps around, fast forward. It's wrong. The music is the very first concrete sign we get that something isn't right with the world. And then the movement. When Steven moves, every time he interacts with a surface, it makes a sound, you know? I don't know if that even picked it up. Yeah, all right. This is normal. This follows the rules of the universe, of that world as we know it. Okay? It's expected. They're not, but when Sadie and Lars move, there is nothing. They are not walking, interacting with the floor or their clothing or their shoes. They're just being translated through space. With this, we're already getting a sense of what is and isn't real. Now we follow Steven to the beach to see Connie. Listen to the water.
Connie! I can't believe it's you! When did you get back in town? Huh? Ah! The water! Connie, what's happening? Where is everyone?
He was incredible! He was incredible! He was incredible!
What?
He was incredible!
Get me out of here! What's wrong with your faces? Lion, you too? Can someone please explain this?
Yeah, okay. So the sounds of the surf make the surrealism more obvious. Instead of the water rolling on the beach, and sounding right, the sound is all chopped up. And when he's walking through the water, each splash is not only exactly identical, but cuts off the previous splash. Now I'm hoping that, I don't know how you perceive the world, but that's not normal. Steven is very aware that at this point, the world is in some way fundamentally broken. Even Connie is broken, repeating the same line over and over again in exactly the same way. But that's okay, because, hey, his dad is here, and everything is all right. Listen to the sounds of movement.
Steven!
Dad? Is that you?
What? Of course. Are you doing all right? You look like you saw a ghost. Either that or you stayed up all night playing a video game.
Dad, I'm freaking out. I feel like I'm stuck inside of some crazy dream.
Whoa. Why don't we share some of those donuts and you can tell me about this crazy night you're having?
So unlike what we saw before with Sadie and Lars, when Greg moves, he not only actually moves correctly, but his physical interactions with other surfaces sound correct. His sandals scuff against the pavement like they should. His bites into the donut well, they sound like a Greg bite. And his dialogue isn't creepy or stilted in any way. It's natural. With this, the Steven Universe crew lulls us into a false sense of security. That is, until...
Well, the important thing is family and friendship, honesty, values, and no one got arrested.
Oh. Huh. Something's not quite right. Pay attention to the music.
I'm still in the room! All of this, it's all a fake-a-roo! This is all wrong!
So, first the music runs a pad. That is a stark contrast to the relaxing music that we were listening to before. This is the music's way of telling you, hey, if you weren't paying attention before, you should be now because something is wrong. Then as the city starts to break, each visual break is accompanied by a sound. And the music becomes the most disjointed it has ever been. But when Steven finally leaves the room, how do we know he really left the room? Well, not only does every movement have a sound, but you can also faintly hear, very softly in the distance, the sound of waves in the background. This reinforces that there is an actual world out there beyond the visible rendering distance. Have a listen.
They're not clouds!
All right, Steven!
You know, that's not my favorite pearl face, but it's up there. Don't get me wrong, I love pearls. She's the best. All right. So, we've been here about an hour. What do we have to show for it? Well, we learned about how the show subverts gender stereotypes and fosters feminist ideals, how it draws on Eastern mythology. Whoever's out there shushing, wow, nice. How it draws on Eastern mythology and culture as a base for character archetypes and designs, and how it uses the language of cinematography and editing and to convey emotion and tone, and how it engages its audience through nuanced, effective sound design. And that's what we learned this time on Steven Universe. I'm Victor Frost, and catch me online. So we do have like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes. If you guys have questions, I will answer them, but only if you raise your hand. If you do not raise your hand, oh yeah, I'll use that. You take the mic over. There we go. And it is. Please and thank you. There we go. So if you have questions, raise your hand. In front of Tony here, we'll bring you the mic. There you go, right up front. Over there. There you go. Candace takes the mics, passes it over to the girl in the skeleton shirt. It's a go. Yes.
What's your take on the representation of like LGBT standards and community inside the show?
I think, So not being a member of the LGBT community, I'm not the best qualified to voice an opinion on this. However, I have been told a pair of my friends, Natalie and oh god, she's gonna kill me for this. What? Thank you. Natalie and Judith do this great podcast called the Gay Breakfast Podcast, and they find it fantastic. So I will defer to their judgment on this. Any other questions? Questions? Oh yeah, by the way, if you would go to the Anime Expo app and rate my panel, I am told that that is important. All right, question over there in the row.
The aisle so I can reach you because I can't actually hand you the mic.
Yes, Candace, for all of her amazing superpowers, cannot float. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
When you got to do this podcast, what inspired you to do this? And the other one is, have you ever got to meet Rebecca Sugar for making this podcast?
This panel, you mean?
I mean this panel,
Yeah. What inspired me to make this panel? I started off doing it as a YouTube show, and it's by the way, if you search for Victor Frost on YouTube, you'll either end up with a cover of a My Little Pony song, which is me, or one of my videos. Alternatively, if you go to www.frost.works, yes, that's a real URL. It does work. You'll find my show through there. But people seem to really like my how I don't want to feel so cocky, so arrogant, to call it an insight. Let me call it my point of view on my breakdowns of the episode. People seem to like it, so I thought, well, I already do a lot of panels at conventions. Let's try this one, and that's basically the crux of it. And no, I have not gotten to meet Rebecca Sugar. I am very sad about this. Yeah. Yes.
What's your opinion on some of the abandoned storylines that we have so far, like the white circle on the moon, business being bubbles, mystery girl? I can't.
Whoa! We don't know if Mystery Girl's abandoned. Gotta hold out hope. Gotta hold on to that. All right. Okay. So opinions on abandoned storylines. Okay. It's not my show. It's their show. It's their universe. I'm not gonna tell them how to do their job. So they've been doing a bang-up job so far. I'm willing to ride the ride as long as they run it. So I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but it's just where I'm at on this. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, you can freeze frame? That's kind of cool. All right, next question.
Okay, this is one of the less serious questions.
Okay.
I don't know if you caught my attention with this one. What's your favorite face? And what I mean by face is like trigger face or you guys know.
I think it's Pearl's smug face. Yeah, that's the one. All right, next question.
My question is like a little bit more of a recommendation. I'm not sure. Have you ever heard of the anime Nichijou?
Yeah.
You watched it then?
Yeah.
Okay, because exactly when you were talking about the scene where Steven is looking at Greg and he's having a panic attack, it reminded me, not in that same dramatic sense, but of the scene in Nichijou when they're doing the House of Cards.
Yep.
The entire scene, they're not talking.
That show is so over the top. I love it to death.
I always felt like you could watch it and not even have to put subtitles because
No.
it would still be funny.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that recommendation. I have taken it before. I've taken that recommendation in advance. Thank you. Next, hey Kendra.
How you doing, buddy?
Hey, buddy.
What's your favorite Steven Universe episode?
The initial D scene. I am a huge car guy. I'm as big as I am about anime, I am even bigger about cars. And that scene, as much as I had nitpicks, was a great scene. All right, next. Whoop whoop. That's the sound of the police. Yeah, what's up?
What advice would you give to novice content creators trying to make their own animated or real-life web series?
Scope. Manage your scope. Do not, people will tell you, shoot for the moon, you'll land among the stars. Shoot for the moon and you need about $80 billion worth of a budget to get there. No, manage your expectations. Start small. Don't try for some amazing thing. Start small and build up. Every project you do helps you build your skills and shorten the amount of time you will need to do the next project. So start small and build your way up.
Excellent question.
Yes.
What turned you on to Steven Universe?
I think my brother was watching it on Cartoon Network one day, and I was just sort of sitting there with him, and just was like, huh, this is an interesting show. Let's go back and watch some of the older episodes. And as I did, I'm like, oh boy. This is my jam. 3 minutes? All right, we only got a few minutes left. Next question. Let's try to get through everybody.
2 quick questions. What is your favorite fusion, and who would you like to see fused the most?
I would like to see Steven fused with Greg. And my favorite fusion is whatever Peridot and Lapis end up being. I don't, current fusion. All right, Opal. All right, next question.
Who's your favorite gem from the Shorty Squad?
Well, there's only like 2, right? 3. Hold on, hold on. Peridot, Steven, Amethyst. Amethyst is my favorite Shorty Squatter. Yep.
Team Stevani. Do you prefer Asian, European, or American cars?
Whoa. A car is a tool, and a tool has its use. To say that Asian cars are all around better than American, or American are all around better, in a drag race, you bet I will put my money on an American car. If I'm going for a touring race, I'm going for a Japanese car, and if it's for rally, put me in an Audi. So, or European Ford Escort Cosworth. Welcome to the LA Auto Show. All right, next, and Tony will cut us off when we need to be cut off.
One less ticket.
Oh, thank you. Well, all right, yes.
Hello.
Hello.
My fellow engineer.
Yeah, hello.
Software for me. Audio. This is actually a question I have for you, and I think I want to know what you would think.
Please try to make it a short question so we can get as many people.
Peridot should get her limb enhancers back.
Yes.
I like her short.
Hi, I just wanted to know what your favorite song in the series has been, and yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's a good one.
I was fine.
Yes. If you look up his YouTube, he is singing that song, and he does a wonderful job with it, in my opinion.
All right, next.
So regarding the sound effects versus the songs, what do you think how they interact together in this episodes, especially since they're only 10 minutes?
They serve fundamentally different purposes. Any emotion evoked by the music is meant to be subtle, and sound effects are meant to lend a sense of realism to a scene. They serve fundamentally different purposes. The only exception to that would be in an episode like Mr. Greg, where the musical numbers serve as an exposition dump of sorts, and that would be the exception. So.
We have a love-hate relationship with that.
I really don't like musicals. My favorite musical is 1776, and that's because it's awesome. But, all right, one more question? Oh, time's up. Sorry. Thank you all for coming, those have left of you, and have a great rest of your con.